Hey guys, Sleepyhound Piper here. We are back on Call of Cthulhu, Eldritch December. Last episode, hopefully. This is Chapter 3, The Madness of the Sea. Here we go. If heaven ever wishes to grant me a boon, it will be a total effacing of the result of a mere chance which fixed my eye on a certain stray piece of shelf paper. It was nothing on which I would normally have stumbled in the course of my daily round. Something just went foof. I don't know what that foof was, but it foofed. For it was an old number on an Australian journal, the Sydney Bulletin for April 18th, 1925. It had escaped even the Cutting Bureau, which had at the time of its issuance been avidly collecting material for my uncle's research. And my throat is parched. Anyway, I had largely given over my inquiries into what Professor Angle called the Cthulhu cult. Let me move my chair a little bit further up. And was visiting a learned friend in Patterson, New Jersey, the curator of a local museum and a mineralogist of note. Examining one day the reserve specimens roughly set on the storage shelves in a rear room of the museum. My eye was caught by an old picture in one of the old papers spread through the stones. Beneath the stones. Beneath the stones. Popping my neck real quick. Oh, I'm popping everything, breaking everything, guys. It was the Sydney Bulletin I have mentioned. For my friend has wild affiliations in all conceivable foreign parts, and the picture was a half-tone cut of a hideous stone image almost identical with that which Legras had found in the swamps. Eagerly clearing the sheet of its precious contents, I scanned the item in detail and was disappointed to find it of only modest length. What is suggested, however, was a portentous significance to my flagging quest, and I carefully tore it out for immediate action. It reads as follows. Mystery derelict found at sea. Valorant arrivals with helpless armed New Zealand yacht in tow. One survivor and dead man found aboard. Tale of a desperate battle and deaths at sea. Rescued seaman refuses particulars of strange experience. Odd idol found in his possession. Inquiry to follow. It was a chicken. Anyway, the Morrison Company's freighter Valiant, or Valgiant, I don't know. We'll call it Valiant. Bound from Valparaiso, arrived this morning at its wharf in Darling Harbor, having in tow the battled and disabled but heavily armed steam yacht Alert of Duridan, NZ, which was sighted April 12th in S latitude 34 degrees by 21. West latitude 152 degrees by 17, with one living and one dead man aboard. The Valiant left Valparaiso March 25th, and on April 2nd was driven considerably south of her course by exceptionally heavy storms and monstrous waves. On April 12th, the derelict was sighted, and though apparently deserted, was found upon boarding to contain one survivor in a half-delirious condition and one man who had evidently been dead for more than a week. The living man was clutching a horrible stone idol of unknown origin, about a foot in height, regarding which nature authorities at Sydney University, the Royal Society, and the museum in College Street all profess complete bafflement, and which the survivor says he found in the cabin of the yacht, in a small carved shrine of common pattern. This man, after recovering his senses, told an extraordinary, strange story of piracy and slaughter. He is Gustav Johansen, of Norwegian of some intelligence, and had been second mate of a two-mast schooner, Amanda of Auckland, which sailed in the Caligo February 20th with a complement of 11 men. The Emma, he says, was delayed and thrown wildly south by her course by the great storm of March 1st, and on March 22nd, in south latitude 49 degrees by 51, and west longitude 128 degrees by 34, encountered the Alert, manned by a queer and evil-looking crew of Kansas and half-caste. Sorry, give me a second. Being ordered peremptorily to turn back, Captain Collins refused, whereupon the strange crew began to fire savagely and without warning upon the schooner with a particular heavy battery of brass cannon, forming part of the yacht's equipment. The Emma's men skewed, he loves that word, skewed, fight. It might be shrewd fight. I might be saying it wrong. Says the survivor, and though the schooner began to sink from shots beneath the waterline, they managed to heave alongside their enemy and board her, grappling with strange crew on the yacht's deck, and being forced to kill them all, the number being slightly superior because of their particular abhorrent and desperate, though rather clumsy mode of fighting. 3 of the Emma's men, including Captain Collins and First Mate Green, were killed, and the remaining 8 under Second Mate Johansen proceeded to navigate the captured yacht, going ahead in their original destination to see if any reason for their ordering back had existed. The next day, it appeared, they raised and landed on a small island, although none is known to exist in that part of the ocean, and 6 of the men somehow died ashore. Though Johansen is queerly reticent about this part of his story, and speaks only of their falling into a rock chasm. Later, it seems, he and one companion boarded the yacht and tried to manage her, but were beaten about by the storm of April 2nd. From that time till his rescue on the 12th, the man remembers little, and he does not recall even William Bryden. His companion died. Bryden's death reveals no apparent cause and was probably due to excitement or exposure. Cable advises from Dunedin report that the Alert was well known there as an island trader and bore an evil reputation along the waterfront. It was owned by a curious group of half-castes whose frequent meetings and night trips to the woods attracted no little curiosity, and it had set sail in great haste just after the storm and earth tremors of March 1st. Our Auckland correspondent gives the Emma and her crew an excellent reputation, and Johansen is described as a sober and worthy man. The Admiralty will institute an inquiry on the whole matter beginning tomorrow, at which every effort will be made to induce Johansen to speak more freely than he has done hitherto. The bottom of green tea is always terrible. Anyway. This was all, together with the picture of the hellish image, but what a train of ideas had started in my mind. Here were new treasures of data on the Cthulhu cult, and evidence that had strange interest at sea as well as on land. What motive prompted the hybrid crew to order back the Emma as they sailed against with their hideous idol? What was the unknown island on which 6 of the Emma's crew had died, and about which the mate Johansen was so secretive? What had the Vice Admiralty's investigation brought out, and what was known of the noxious cult in Dunedin? And what marvelous of all, what deep and more than natural linkage of dates was this which gave a malign and now undeniable significance to the various turn of events so carefully noted by my uncle? March 1st. Our February 28th, according to the international dateline, the earthquake and the storm had come. From Dunedin, the Alert and her noisome crew had darted eagerly forth, as if imperiously summoned. And on the other side of the earth, poets and artists had begun to dream of a strange, dank, cyclopean city, whilst a young sculptor had molded in his sleep the form of the dreaded Cthulhu. March 23rd, the crew of the Emma landed on the unknown island and left 6 men dead. And on that date, the dreams of the sensitive men assumed a heightened vividness and darkened with dread of a great monster, maligned pursuit. Whilst an architect had gone mad and a sculptor had lapsed suddenly into delirium. And what of this storm on April 2nd? The date on which all the dreams of the dank city ceased, and Wilcox emerged unharmed from the bondage of a strange fever. What of all this, and of those hints of old Castro about the sunken, star-born old ones and their coming reign, their fateful cults and their mastery of dreams? Was I tottering on the brink of cosmic horrors beyond man's power to bear? If so, they must be horrors of the mind alone, for in some way the 2nd of April had put a stop to whatever monstrous menace had begun its siege on mankind's soul. That evening, after a day of hurried cabling and arranging, I bade my host adieu and took a train for San Francisco. In less than a month, I was in Dunedin, where, however, I found that little was known of the strange cult members who had lingered in the old sea taverns. Waterfront scum was far too common for special mention, though there was vague talk about one inland trip where mongrels had made, during which faint drumming and red flame were noted on the distant hills. In Upland, I learned that Johansen had returned with yellow hair turned white after a profundancy and inconclusive questioning at Sydney, and had thereafter sold his cottage in West Street and sailed with his wife to his old home in Oslo. Of his stirring experience, he would tell his friends no more than he had told the Admiralty officials, and all they could do was to give me his Oslo address. After that, I went to Sydney and talked profitlessly with seamen and members of the Vice Admiralty's court. I saw the Alert, now sold and in commercial use, at Circle K in Sydney Cove, but gained nothing from its non-committal bulk. The crouching image with its cuttlefish head, dragon body, scaly wings, and hieroglyphic pedestal were preserved in the museum at Hyde Park, and I studied it long and well, and finding it a thing of baleful, exquisite workmanship. Let me make sure I was on the right page there. I am on the right page. Okay. and with the same utter mystery, terrible antiquity, and unearthling strangeness of material which I had noted on Legras's smaller specimen. Geologists, the curator told me, had found it a monstrous puzzle, for they vowed that the world had no rock like it. Then I thought with a shudder of what old Castro had told Lagrange about the primal great ones. They had come from the sea, or they had come from the stars, and had brought their images with them. Shaken with such a mental resolve or resolution as I had never before known, I now resolved to mate Johansen in Oslo. Sailing for London, I re-embarked at once for the Norwegian capital, and one autumn day landed at the trim wharfs in the shadow of Egberg, Johansen's address, I discovered, and lay in the old town of King's Herald, Hardrada, which kept alive the name of Oslo during all the centuries that the greater city masqueraded as Christenta. I made the brief trip by taxicab and knocked with palpitant heart at the door of the neat and ancient building with plastered front. A sad-faced woman in black answered my summons, and I was stung with disappointment when she told me in halting English that Gustav Johansen was no more. He had not survived his return, said his wife, for the doing at sea in 1925 had broken him. He had told her no more than he had told the public, but had left a long manuscript. Actually, I might be wrong. This may have been written in 1950, after the Second World War. I don't know. His language is way behind the time. Left a long manuscript of technical matters, as he said, written in English, evidently in order to safeguard her from the peril of casual perusal. During a walk through a narrow lane near the Gothenburg dock, a bundle of papers falling from an attic window had knocked me down. Two Lancaster sailors at once helped him to his feet, knocked him down. Two Lancaster sailors once helped him to his feet, but before the ambulance could reach him, he was dead. Physicians found no adequate cause for the end, and lay it to heart trouble and a weakened constitution. A weakened constitution. I now felt gnawing at my vitals that dark terror which will never leave me till I, too, am at rest, accidentally or otherwise. Persuading the widow that my connection with her husband's technical matters were sufficient to entitle me to his manuscript, I bore the document away and began to read it on the London boat. It was a simple rambling thing, a native soldier effort at post facto diary. Give me 1 second. And strove to recall day by day the last awful voyage. I cannot attempt to transcribe it verbatim in all its cloudiness and redundance, but I will tell its gist enough to skew why the sound of the water against the vessel's sides became so unendurable to me that I stopped my ears with cotton. Johansen, thank God, did not know quite all, even though he saw the city and the thing. But I shall never sleep calmly again when I think of the horrors that lurk ceaselessly beneath life in time and in space, and of those unhallowed blasphemous seas from elder stars with dreams beneath the sea. No, and favored by a nightmare cult ready and eager to loose them on the world whenever another earthquake shall heave their monstrous stone city again to the sun and air. Johansen's voyage had begun just as he told it to the Vice Admiralty. The Emma, in ballast, had cleared Auckland on February 20th and had felt the full force of that earthquake-born tempest, which must have heaved up from the sea bottom the horrors that filled men's dreams. Once more under control, the ship was making good progress when held up by the Alert on March 22nd, and I could feel the mate's regret as he wrote of her bombardment and sinking, and of the swarthy cult fiends. On the Alert, he spoke with significant horror. There was some peculiarly abominable quality about them which made their destruction seem almost a duty. And Johansen skews ingenious wonder at the change of ruthlessness brought about his party during the proceedings of the court of inquiry. Then, driven ahead by curiosity in their captured yacht, under Johansen's command, the men sought a great stone pillar sticking out of the sea, and in south latitude, 47th degrees by 9, west latitude 126 degrees by 43, came upon a coastline of mingled mud, ooze, and weedy cyclopean masonry, which can be nothing less than the tangled substance of Earth's supreme terror. The nightmare corpse city of R'lyeh, that was built in measureless eons beyond history by the vast loathsome shapes that seep down from the dark stars. There lay great Cthulhu and his hordes, hidden in green slimy vaults, and sending out at last, after cycles incalculable, the thoughts that spread fear to the dreams of the sensitive, and called impreviously to the faithful to come on a pilgrimage of liberation and restoration. All this Johansen did not suspect, but God knows he soon saw enough. I suppose that only a single mountaintop, the hideous monolith-crowned citadel whereon great Cthulhu was buried, actually emerged from the waters. When I think of the extent of all that may be brooding down there, I almost wish to kill myself forthwith. Johansen and his men were awed by the cosmic majesty of this dripping Babylon of elder demons, and must have guessed without guidance that it was nothing of this or any sane planet. Awe at the unbelievable size of the greenish stone blocks, at the dizzying heights of the great carven monolith, and at the stupefying identity of the colossal statues and bas-reliefs with the queer image found in the shrine on the Alert. Is prominently visible in every line of the mate's frightened description. I'm sorry, I'm kicking the table. Without knowing what futurism is like, Johansen achieved something very close to it when he spoke of the city. For instead of describing any definite structure or building, he dwells only on broad impressions of vast angles and stone surfaces. Surfaces too great to belong to anything right or proper for this earth, and impious with horrible images and hieroglyphics. I mention his talk about angles because it suggests something Wilcox had told me of his awful dreams. He had said that the geometry of the dream place he saw was abnormal, non-Euclidean, and loathsome, redolent of spheres and dimensions apart from ourselves. Now an unlettered seaman felt the same thing whilst gazing at the terrible reality. Johansen and his men landed at the sloped mud bank on the monstrous Acropolis and clambered slippery up over titan oozing blocks, which could have been no mortal staircase. The very sun of heaven seemed distorted when viewed through the polarizing miasma welling out from this sea-soaked perversion, and twisted menace and suspense lurked leeringly in those crazily exclusive angles of carven rock, where a second glance skewed concavely after the first skewed convexly. Something very like fright had come over all of the explorers before anything more definite than rock and ooze and weeds was seen. Each would have fled had he not feared the scorn of the others, and it was only half-heartedly that they searched, vainly, as it proved for some portable souvenir to bring away. It was Rodriguez, the Portuguese, who climbed up the foot of the monolith and shouted of what he had found. The rest followed him and looked curiously at the immense carven door with the now familiar squid dragon bas-relief. It was, Johansen said, like a giant barn door, and they all felt that it was a door because of the ornament lintel, threshold, and jambs around it, though they could not decide whether it lay flat like a trapdoor or slantwise like an outside cellar door. As Wilcox would have said, the geometry of the place was all wrong. One could not be sure that the sea and the ground were horizontal. Hence the relative position of everything else seemed phantasmally variable. Bryden pushed at the stone in several places without result. Then Donovan felt over it delicately around the edge. He pressed each point separately as he went. He climbed intermittently along the grotesque stone molding. That is, one would call it climbing if the thing was not, after all, horizontal. And the men wondered how any door in the universe could be so vast. Then, very softly, very slowly, the acre-great panel began to give inward at the top, and they saw that it was balanced. Donovan slid or somewhat propelled himself down or along the jamb and rejoined his fellows, and everyone watched the queer recession of the monstrous carven portal. In this fantasy of prismatic distortion, it moved anomalously in a diagonal way, so that all the rules of matter and perception seemed upset. And I'm going to drink some water, because this motherfucker's trying to kill me. I swear, it's like the end of the thing. He's like, you know what? It's time to use big words again. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you try to understand what I'm saying? That water must have came out of my garage. It's a little gassy tasting. Anyway. Where are we at? Oh, the aperture was dark, or was black, with a darkness almost material. That timberness was indeed a positive quality, for it obscured such parts of the inner walls as ought to have been revealed, and actually burst forth like smoke from its eon-long imprisonment, visibly darkening the sky as it slunk away into the shrunken and gloobious sky on flapping membranous wings. The odor arising from the newly opened depths was intolerable, and at length the quick-eared Hawkins thought he heard a nasty slopping sound down there. Everyone listened, and everyone was listening still when it lumbered sloppingly into sight and gropingly squeezed its gelatinous green immensity through the black doorway into the tainted outward air of that poison city of madness. Poor Johansen's handwriting almost gave out when he wrote of this. Of the 6 men who never reached the ship, he thinks 2 perished of pure fright in the accursed instant. The thing cannot be described. There is no language for such abysms of shrieking and immemorial lunacy, which eldritch directions of all manner, force, and cosmic order. Contradictions, there we go, of all matter, force, and cosmic order. A mountain walked or stumbled. God. What wonder that across the earth a great architect went mad, and poor Wilcox raved with fever in that telepathic instant. The thing of the idols, the green sticky spawn of the stars, had awakened to claim his own. The stars were right again, and what an age-old cult had failed to do by design, a band of innocent sailors had done by accident. After virgintilisms of time, tilons of years, great Cthulhu was loose again and ravening in delight. 3 men were swept up by flabby claws before anyone turned. God rest them, if there by any rest in the universe. They were Donovan, Guerra, and Argstrom. Parker slipped as the other 3 were plunged frenziedly over endless vistas of green-crusted rock to the boat. And Johansen swears he was swallowed up by an angle of masonry which shouldn't have been there. An angle which was acute, but behaved as if it was obtuse. So only Bryden and Johansen reached the boat and pulled desperately for the alert as the mountainous monstrosity flopped down the slimy stones and hesitated, floundering at the edge of the water. Steam had not been suffered to go down entirely, despite the departure of all hands for the shore, and it was the work of only a few moments of feverish rushing up and down between wheel and engines to get the alert underway. Slowly, amidst the distorted horrors of the indescribable scene, she began to churn the lethal waters, whilst on the masonry of that charnel shore, that was not of earth, the Titan thing from the stars slivered and glibbed like Polyphremy, cursing the fleeting ship of Odysseus. Polythyme, which I think is the... I don't remember what that is. I don't remember what that is. Then then the storied Cyclops. Then bolder than the storied... Oh, yeah, okay, so I am right. It was the Cyclops that he took the eye out of. Great Cthulhu slid greasily into the water and began to pursue with vast wave-rising strokes of cosmic potency. Bryden looked back and went mad, laughing shrillingly as he kept on laughing at intervals until death found him one night in the cabin, whilst Johansen was wandering deliriously. But Johansen had not given out yet. Knowing that the thing could surely overtake the alert until steam was fully up, he resolved on a desperate chance, and setting the engines to full speed, ran lightning-like on deck and reversed the wheel. There was a mighty ebbing and foaming in the nodsome brine, and as the steam mounted higher and higher, the brave Norwegian drove his vessel head-on against the pursuing jelly, which rose above the unclean froth like the stern of a demon galleon. The awful squid head, with writhing feelers, came nearly up to the boat's spirit of sturdy yacht, but Johansen drove on relentlessly. There was a busting as of an exploding bladder, a squish, a sloshing nastiness as of cloven sunfish, a stench as of 1,000 opened graves, and a sound that the chronicler would not put on paper. For an instant the ship was befouled by an acrid and blinding green cloud, and then there was only a venomous seething astron, where God in heaven, the scattered plasticity of that nameless sky spawn, was nebulously recombing in hateful original form, whilst its distance widened every second as the alert gained impotence from its mounting steam. That was all. After the Johansen had brought it over the idol, in the cabin, and attended to a few matters of food for himself and the laughing maniac by his side, he did not try to navigate after the first bold flight, for the reaction had taken something out of his soul. Then came the storm of April 2nd, and the gathering of the clouds about his consciousness. There, in a sense of spectral whirling, were liquid gulfs of infinity, of dazzling rides through reeling universes on a comet's tail, of hysterical plunges from the pit into the moon, and from the moon back again to the pit, all livened by Cashanice chorus of the distorted. Hilariously elder gods, and the green bat-winged mocking imps of Tartarus. Out of that dream came rescue, the valiant, the vice-admiralty court, the streets of Dunedin, the long voyage back home to the house of Egbert. He could not tell. They would think him mad. He would write of what he knew before death came, but his wife must not guess. Death would be a boon, for only it could blot out the memories. That was the document I read, and now I have placed it in the tin box beside the bas-relief and the papers of Professor Angle. With it shall go this record of mine, this test of my own sanity, wherein is pieced together that which I hope may never be pieced together again. I have looked upon all that the universe has to hold of horror, and even the skies of spring and the flowers of summer must ever afterward be poison to me. But I do not think my life will be long. As my uncle went, as old poor Johansen went, so shall I go. I know too much, and the cult still lives. Cthulhu still lives too. I suppose, again, in that chasm of stone which has shielded him since the sun was young, his accursed city is sunken once more. For the valiant sailed over the spot after the April storm, but his ministers on earth still bellow and prance and slay around idol-capped monoliths in lonely places. He must have been trapped by the sinking while within his black abyss, or else the world by now be screaming with fright and frenzy. Who knows the end? What has risen may sink, and what has sank may rise. Lonesomeness waits and dreams in the deep, and decay spreads over the tottering cities of the men. A time will come, but I must not and cannot think. Let me pray that, if I do not survive this manuscript, my executioners may put caution before audacity and say that it meets no other eye. 4. Give me a minute. 4. If I can find the son of a bitch. Give me 1 second. I'm so sorry. That is dead, which cannot which can eternal lie. That is not dead, which can eternal lie. And with strange eons, even death may die. And that is The Call of Cthulhu. It was pretty okay. Got a little wordy in the middle there. But we have finished. And that is the end of Eldritch December. So, we're going to have a good one. You guys have a good one. We are outie 5,000. This was an undertaking that I started. And let me tell you, for some guy who doesn't talk a lot, deciding to read for, at this point, 5 hours, 6 hours now, has been a doozy, especially on material this wordy and classist. It's been a minute. Anyway, I appreciate you guys taking me. I appreciate you guys going with me on this journey, of this adventure that I started. And we are at the end of it, at least for 2023. We will see what adventures we will have for 2024. We're going to try to stay away until the very end of reading this kind of material. Because, yeah. So anyway, you guys have a good new year, because it is absolutely New Year's now. I have been reading, and I'm pretty sure we have hit New Year's. Let me look. Let me look at my little tiny thing. Maybe it's on the left. It is absolutely New Year's. Right now, it's New Year's. So you guys have a good new year, and hopefully 2024 will bring you something that you want. New pipes, new tobaccos, a new story. You have a good